have the pleasure to introduce Dr. Ivan Rodero. Well, we know each other for quite a long time. We've been working in similar things, and you will see. We don't have the same background. He's expert, well, PhD in computer engineering. I'm in telecommunications, so it's not the same. But we have several common ideas, and in the last years we have been joining. We started connecting with one type of research cyberinfrastructures that was related to underwater cables, but we end up at the end with more, human-related stuff. You will see. I think he will introduce a very wide range of activities because he has been involved in so many things that it's almost impossible for me to keep in mind all of them. So, and I think that well, Ivan, it's the floor is yours, and you will introduce that idea. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jaume. Is this working? Okay. Thank you very much, Jaume, for the introduction. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for joining in this call today, in this talk today. Before I go through a journey on cyber infrastructure, which is going to be the topic of my talk, I'd like to give some sort of background and put some context here. So I will start with some exercise that I did the other day. I put together some sort of data scraper, and I went to the Institute's website where you have your publications. This is not obviously high quality work, so that's a quick thing. But my point in this slide is that you can see here the number of publications over time since 1980 to 2023, and the average number of authors in these publications. So even here below, you can see the amount of publications with 2, 3, 4, or more than 4 authors. And the blue one is the one with more than 4 authors. So clearly, you have interdisciplinary teams when you are working together and doing research and science. And that is something that is becoming more and more obvious. And in my area of work, clearly over the years, we have seen that computing and simulation has become the third pillar of science. There are many problems that you cannot just wait until, for example, I will touch the climate change. So you cannot wait until something happens in the climate to take action. You need to use simulation, you need to use IT to resolve these things. And, or even like waiting for 2 galaxies to collide is not viable, right? So, for example, in the case of modeling the climate change, we have a clear problem now. We need to find, based on a function, you would like to discretize the domain and get some sort of insights from that. That would help you to predict major events. You can also react to potential situations. And all of this is facilitated through basically what I'm calling cyber infrastructure. I'll get into this in a second. Also, society and science overall, they are being transformed by data and compute, and especially on data. So in the 23rd century, we are seeing that data is becoming in the middle of the equation. So nearly every field of science and discovery is coming from data poor to data rich. And this involves making significant changes in the way that you are thinking the problems, in the way you are approaching these problems. So computational science is becoming more and more important. So clearly, based on my previous slide on the publications, and this is the point, multidisciplinary collaborations are important, are essential. So you would like to have some sort of groups working together. Probably the discovery is based on one single person with a microscope looking for this specific thing. It's difficult to happen anymore. No? We have groups typically from different countries working together in problems. And you can see here's just a joke, but these are essential, but at the same time, they are hard. So we need to find ways to facilitate these collaborations and to bring together actors from different domains into something that brings us innovation and also advances in science. And one of the key points in my talk is how cyber infrastructure is democratizing science. And this is important in different ways. So on the one hand, we have the knowledge of understanding what is available for you, that you have some sort of compute infrastructure, data infrastructure, AI models, all of this stuff that is available to you, but you need to know it. Also, we have some technical issues. You need to get access to this infrastructure and to be able to afford it. There are some institutions with funding, and they can buy maybe a lot of computers and like the most fancier GPU, but others they cannot, and they have limitations in what they can do in terms of science. But also we have the social awareness of cyber infrastructure, which is always not an issue. Here I'm putting also this reference to the missing millions. That's a report from the NSF in which they are pointing to this problem that marketizing science is important because there are many institutions that they cannot access to these capabilities. But before talking more about cyber infrastructure, let me give you a definition, at least the one that I like. Right? So I use this definition from a paper from Stewart and others from 2010. And they are basically pointing to a system that is consisting of computing systems, also data, and we have people as well, or communities, in addition to networks, and of course, like scholarly innovation and so on. There is in the National Science Foundation in the US, this is where I've been doing my work for the last 15 years, most of the time. There is a lot of interest in cyber infrastructure. So even at the National Science Foundation, they have an office for cyber infrastructure. And that's something that here in Europe, there are some advances with EOS, for example, but still there is not that emphasis on cyber infrastructure and supporting a lot of the work that I'm going to be presenting. I like to complement the definition with this vision of cyber infrastructure in which you can see the intersection of computing systems, data, people, and networks, and I see it as an overlay. So you have like different layers below. You can have, that's an example, biodiversity research, for instance, social sciences, and others potentially, and the intersection of all of these through cyber infrastructure allows you to come up with interdisciplinary approaches, and this is the point that I like to stress in the next slides. Also, cyber infrastructure is becoming an enabler of discoveries and innovation. There are, in the spectrum that you can expect from like telescopes trying to detect signals and modeling like viruses and stuff like that, but also there is a lot of interest that is also associated with the work that also you are doing with data-driven urgent science. There are many things that we need to consider, for example, earthquakes, tsunami, weather issues that now we are seeing, for example, in California these days. But it becomes even more complex. With the COVID, with the pandemic, we saw also the need for reacting to these issues quickly. And cyber infrastructure is trying to resolve this and to facilitate these sort of problems. Obviously, as you can imagine, the adoption of artificial intelligence is becoming critical. And right now, almost everywhere, everyone is looking at AI in one way or another. Many people are looking at large language models, so you can have your own kind of ChatGPT thing, so you can help yourself in your task, but also there are more complex and sophisticated models that they are tailored to your needs. And obviously there is a lot of interest from the funding agencies, and more projects are being funded when they are incorporating these aspects. One example here is the reconstruction of this black hole image with dictionary learning. It's just one of the use cases that I have handy, but you can think about this in many other domains. And now let me just switch gears and start bringing with some highlights in terms of more, I would say, topics associated with geosciences. Excuse me. I had the opportunity to also use cyber infrastructure for other problems, like, for example, the Cancer Institute of New Jersey. We work with them to identify cancer cells and all this stuff. But clearly, we have instruments and experiments that they produce a lot of data. So we have a big data problem. Here you have some examples of instruments that they are producing huge amounts of data, and obviously there is also, even in industry, a lot of interest for big data across the board. But also society is producing a lot of big data. You can think of social media, but also sensors that you have embedded within yourself. Like you can imagine your smartwatch, you can think about the smart meter at home, mobile phones, these RFIDs that you have in the supermarket for everything, for warehousing, management, and so on. And I will talk more about this in the second part of my talk when I go into citizen science, because this is also quite linked to people. So now let me talk a little bit about in my diagram, I was mentioning computer systems. And I will give you just some experiences that I had in this domain, just to give you some thoughts. This is some numbers. This is from 2018 or so, in which I was working at Rutgers University. I was responsible for the systems. And we had an ecosystem of computing infrastructures. We have different instruments that they were for research, for energy efficiency, for different types of things. You can see some numbers and some companies. But for me, the most important is not necessarily the actual infrastructure. So here also in the institute, you have also a computing infrastructure. And by the way, I mean, I have some thoughts about it. If you're interested, I mean, I'll be happy to talk to you more about this based on my experiences. But we had the opportunity to also host the cyber infrastructure for OOI, and also we received funding for putting together some regional cyber infrastructures, in addition to high-performance computing systems. For example, we had Caliburn, which was at that point the second most powerful computing system among the Big 10 universities in the US, and the 8th most powerful in the US university, and the 166th most powerful supercomputing in the planet based on the top 500 list. But for me, more than numbers and infrastructure, the important is the impact of this infrastructure. How is this facilitating science? And these are some examples, and that reminds me of my times when I was doing my PhD in the Barcelona Supercomputing Center, that I was involved in so many projects at that time in grid computing, high-performance computing. And here, I have just a couple of examples. There is this group that they were doing protein studies to understand neurobiology. We have other use cases, like modeling the evolution of galaxies, or software optimizations, and the list is huge. So I just pick 3 of them to give you some thoughts. So clearly, cyber infrastructure from the, I would say, traditional way is facilitating this sort of science. But we need to look beyond that sort of use cases. We have also large facilities. Here there is also this duality. In the US, typically we use the term large facilities. Here, typically they are called research infrastructures. That is pretty much the same thing. In the same way that cyber infrastructure, typically in Europe, is called e-infrastructure. So I'm referring to probably the same thing. So we have a lot of infrastructures around the globe. Many are international, that in this particular case, you can even see a report on those in this URL from the National Science Foundation. But there are many more organizations, funding agencies looking into that. And I like to emphasize here the experiences with OOI, with the Ocean Observatories Initiative. Probably you are familiar with this initiative in the US. You are experts on these topics here in the Institute, and the whole thing is having an observatory in different regions of interest, and the people involved. We had the partners that when we were part of this initiative, they were part of the project, and also the leadership at that point was, it has changed a little bit, but this is at the time that I was there, I was the program manager for cyber infrastructure for almost 5 years. And obviously, OI is looking into changing the way that you are doing observation. I mean, this is maybe a joke, but instead of having more traditional methods, now we have complex and large sensors that you can deploy in the field. You can have, like in the case of OI, the cable array, that you have a longer cable with fiber optics and power, and you can include a lot of sensors. You have also a lot of types of, I have here some numbers for OI. It is true that 2 of the locations of interest, they were decommissioned at some point because NSF had to cut the budget, but well, this is life, And here you can see the numbers, There are many platforms with many instruments, but most importantly for me was handling these about 100,000 data products. It includes from real-time data from the high-definition cameras coming from the axial seamount volcano, from gliders, from telemetry, and all types of data. And you know all of this. I mean, having satellite data has its own business. Also, recovering the instruments it has its own staff. I mean, you know how expensive it is and how it works and how complex it can be. All the ship data and so on. And we had also the cable data. So you have here some numbers just to give you an idea of OI in case that you are not that familiar. But I will just go back to the cyber infrastructure again. And here we had to put together a cyber infrastructure that is able to do data acquisition, storage, and many other things, cybersecurity issues that maybe you sometimes don't think about it. I remember when we launched OI, I think in the first day, I think all the data was copied from China. So they went directly and they took all the data. The same day it was open. So this is something that you need to be prepared. And even in depending what organizations, you need to have some sort of security for protecting your systems. So in this case, was a very interesting journey and was, well, I enjoyed it a lot. It was also a tough time because we had to put together a cyber infrastructure in 13 months. It was supposed to be a 5 years construction project, but for whatever reasons, no, we eventually took the project with this limited time frame. And we had a system, you can see that. Now we have some infrastructure, we had some data in the east coast of the US, other infrastructure in the west coast. So basically the cable was landing in Oregon, and then it went through the Navy, and we had to transfer the data from the west coast to the east coast. And in the east coast, we had the core or the cold data that was stored, it was curated, and was preserved for long term. We had also a team taking care of this for 24/7 delivery of data and services, because you cannot just shut down everything and don't let researchers and also people using this data for their, I would say, operations. So it was interesting and a huge investment from NSF to put this together. But instead of focusing on the infrastructure itself, now I like to talk on how these facilities, they can help on driving data-driven science. This is, for me, the most important aspect of this. We have some papers about it that you can check, no? But the question here is that you have access to open and like near real time, and I'm saying democratized because it's open, it means that anyone can access to it, from multiple instruments. You can integrate data now into workflows, so you can discover the data, you need to access the data, maybe you have to fusion this data to get some products of interest, and also you might need to do data science to obtain insights from this data. So cyber infrastructure, in this case, I'm putting this in red, should enable you for doing science, but not limiting what you can do with this data. So I will give you a few examples, just to give you some highlights. I have many more, but this is an example in which we were taking digital still camera images from OI in this case, and we were using also cyber infrastructure from OI, but also the cloud for doing some sort of processing of these images for identification of species or just elements within the scene. And the idea was using streaming data of images of different size, but also doing the processing based on some criteria. For example, data was delivered to consumers based on the content. So if you're interested in specific content, you will be accessing that. Also, the resolution could be reduced if the latency was more than expected. So you cannot wait for maybe a response, or then you can do something different in terms of streaming that data. And also the image resolution could be reduced if only contains specific objects. I can also talk about other examples of research infrastructures. In this case, I had the pleasure to work during 5 years in EMSO-ERIC, and it was a great pleasure. It's a pity he's not physically here, Juanjo, but I worked with him, and it was a big pleasure to work with him. And also had the opportunity to meet also Jaume and the team, and since then, 2018 or so, we have been collaborating in different projects. And here it's a different animal, so OI and EMSO-ERIC is completely different, is organized in a different way. I mean, you cannot compare them, but the mission is kind of similar. So EMSO is basically, the mandate is to instrument like the ocean around, this is around Europe. And here we have also a clear, scientific challenges that you want to approach, like also ocean warming and all these things, marine ecosystem, real-time observations for responding. And for this, we need some sort of cyber infrastructure as well. So we put together a bunch of tools and different facilities for helping us on managing data, using first principles, and all of this good stuff that now is mandatory for any, in this case, consortium willing to instrument the ocean. And I'm not going to get again into specific examples because we have many, so we got involved in so many projects in 5 years, and maybe you are familiar with some of them, from identifying a species like by recognition of images, from using, in this case, fair principles for data, having portals to deliver data to the community in a simplified way. There are many cases. If you want to discuss, I'm happy to talk more about this later. But now I like to make a little bit of switch. We talk about large facilities and how these large facilities and the data that they produce or they provide, they help you to do research. Now, the future on these large facilities, at least from my point of view, is obviously data and science, and it is important when you combine multiple of these facilities or research infrastructures. I have here some examples. I know they're all from the US, UNAV, QUISE, and now is their scope, IceCube, NEON, and OI, and many others. The question is, you may have complex workflows that requires to get all of these data sets. You need to discover them. You need to know how to handle those data sets. Obviously, the first principles is trying to help on that, but it's not sufficient. We need also to have mechanisms for doing many tasks for these sort of problems. So delivering products and also having other kind of mechanisms like intelligent discovery of this data, so you don't need to do like the all hard work that sometimes involves going into a platform, a web platform, or some sort of repository, so you can simplify this process. So obviously, if we can leverage as much as possible technical solutions and investments, that is helpful. So in particular, in the US, we were taking use of Access, which is a high-performance computing infrastructure, also Sage, which is a network of edge kind of appliances, OSG, and Cloud Bank, which is basically delivering cloud credits to researchers. So now I like to explain in this area, excuse me, a couple of examples that they relate to this problem of putting together data from multiple domains even, or different facilities. So we were awarded by NSF to put together what is called Virtual Data Collaboratory. It was the first attempt to build. It was initially in the northeast region of the US with Penn State and other partners. The idea was having an infrastructure to share data, but also share infrastructure and share code and share anything you need to build workflows of interest with data that at some point in this project, we started with data from OI, data from also bioinformatics and other domains. And we had some sort of architecture where you had the use cases, you had the data service layer, and then the infrastructure in terms of networking in order to have fast access to this data. All of this is very technical, I know. I'll try not to get so technical and just move into like real examples. This is where I think is most important. Here I have a few examples that I want to share with you. For example, in this case, we use BDC in this particular case for, in collaboration with, in this case, Diego Melgar from University of Oregon, for using their algorithms on simulating earthquakes. So the idea is they run this set of 50,000, 100,000 combinations of stations in a specific area. He was looking into Chile, into Cascadia region now, and now he has a center. And we worked together on having these sort of simulations that they were taking very long time within a computer or within their lab into cyber infrastructure. And then we were accelerating this significantly. So that was able to create these ruptures, and a model that then you can apply, and when there is some sort of event happening, you can compare with this model and have some sort of quick response to these earthquakes. The same thing is illustrated here with this real-time data processing with streaming from a bottom pressure and tilt instrument from OI, for example. This is something that you were having the infrastructure to discover the stream in particular, and then you could, from this discovery phase, have some sort of little of code with Python or whatever, and with this you could be able to stream the data from, in this case, from OI. In this case, we had some technology based on Kafka, and then you had basically the real-time data being given to you, so you can be like obtaining this data and start like doing your workflows, and maybe you will react to some changes in the stream. Then you can also create some sort of producer of data based on that and create a product that you can publish and register again back to the repository, and that becomes available for the future, for the next issue, for the next research. Another one is the earthquake early warning from the point of view of combining data from multiple sources. So basically, seismometers are good for smaller earthquakes. High precision GPS, so ground movement, is better for larger earthquakes. And we thought, okay, how we can combine those to do maybe a better solution? And doing this completely centralized is not viable. So we put together using AI, a model distributed within like a network, and basically we were able to get very good results and be able to predict much better both the smaller and larger earthquakes with this approach. We got also a best award in a paper in the Artificial Intelligence Conference for Societal Impact. And just as a case, also we look into tsunami early warning, which is pretty related. Here as well, we took data from OI, from UNAFCO and IRIS, that now they merge into Earthscope. And basically, we are looking into like this sort of data also to provide some sort of solution for early warning for tsunami. I know that you are experts on that, so I won't get into much detail. No? And here also we use the whole infrastructure that we had available to us in the US, no? Collecting data from maybe the West Coast, sending data to other places, and also we leverage the whole infrastructure that was in the Pacific Research Platform that was already put together. You see these red points, all of these is points of presence for this network, and all of this was simplifying the way to apply machine learning techniques with these streams of data. Also, I'm just pointing to other potential cases. No? I mean, you know that it's been a problem these days in California with the fires, and these guys actually are looking into this problem. So I work with them. They have a network of cameras and a network of sensors, but also there are other problems. For example, in this case, they were looking into the effects of the smoke coming from these fires into Utah, right? Because then I mean, you suddenly saw a lot of smoke coming, and if you don't make action in advance, it is an impact into like the people, into the society, and also there is this sort of urgent computing kind of approaches that are needed for society. And let me also be more explicit with other research that we did, also leveraging cyber infrastructure that might be relevant here. We look into the user access patterns. In this case, we use OI because it was handy, and also we use UNAFCO because we were collaborating in a project called Geoscience Framework at that point. All of this infrastructure that I mentioned, together with research, was about 50 million in total, no? But from this $50 million, 20 was on research grants. So a significant portion of this effort that I'm describing over the years is based on research grants and research approaches. So here we were looking into two types: the human access, so basically people going into a web portal and downloading specific data, but also program access, like automatic systems that they are programmed to retrieve data in a given frequency or for whatever criteria. And we were looking into if we could have some sort of relationship between these access patterns. So we saw overlapping accesses, we saw also like regular downloads, and based on that, we were able to have some sort of prefetching mechanism. So you can imagine in this case, for example, OI, you can look into the spatial correlation or the temporal correlation, and you have also instruments in multiple areas. So based on this understanding of the patterns, you can see some spatial correlation. So based on that, what you can do is before you ask for the data becomes closer to you. That's a prefetching mechanism. So we built this algorithm with clustering and so on, and eventually we found this temporal correlation, and we were able to have the data prepared in advance, so when you make the request, you get it much faster. Right? It's just an example, and also we had the same thing. No? You can imagine, here you have the details of some of this historical-based also prediction model, and it's something similar to this. It's almost like a joke, like the beer and diapers problem that is well known, no? In which in the supermarkets, there was some sort of random analysis of the behavior from like fathers in this case, and they found that there were in many cases like buying beer and diapers because for whatever reason, because probably the aisles in the supermarket, they were very close by. So it was just convenient, they were buying them. So you can see many of these issues if you look into them. So it's important to use these sort of mechanisms because it can help you in this case to accelerate the access to the data. But also another problem that we addressed was the recommender systems. So the question here is that we have some scientific facilities, we have data from science, but why don't we do the same thing as Amazon is doing? So when you go and you shop for something, the next day you get the recommendation for something very close. Why not doing the same thing? So we explored that, and we start working on knowledge graphs. Maybe some of you in your research are working with knowledge graphs, and it worked pretty well. So we were able to look into examples. So we look into air quality research, for example, no? and then we were trying to see, based on the user interest, if we could able to provide some sort of data, scientific data of interest for these cases. An example also for recommender systems was with OOI data, because it was very handy. We have it there. And we did it basically looking also at a specific parameter like temperature, salinity, or pressure, no? And based on location and the specific parameter, we were able to also suggest the users that maybe you are looking for some specific time series for temperature, it's likely that you will look for the next one, no? Or maybe you are looking for salinity, you will look later for something else. So we were looking into these issues. And the other thing that we did after this BDC project that I mentioned before, no, was kind of finished, that was a project itself, we got also funding from the National Science Foundation to establish, I would say, this is a pilot for an actual data facility. And this is basically a pilot for putting together a way to access cyber infrastructure, data, and services to everyone in a way that we can federate all of this existing infrastructure, data, and even repositories that they already exist, and make them accessible to everyone. So this is quite important because in NDP here, we are looking just for equity, which is not the same thing as equality. In many cases, people believe that giving the same to everyone already works, but this is not the case. And it happens. There are many institutions in the US and everywhere that they are not well funded, so they don't have the same possibilities than other institutions with more funding. So clearly, having this is a big deal. And we got support from that before transitioning out. And this is just a platform that you can also check. There is an entry point as a web portal where you can go, you can have your workspace, you can discover data from different repositories of data. And then you can also have access to maybe a Jupyter environment to do your workflow executions. And also you can run data challenges, you can involve the students with classroom work. And also we got recently in November an award for HPC Wire in the supercomputing for the best use of high-performance computing, data analytics, and artificial intelligence. And here, obviously, AI is the key for this. Most people, they want to use artificial intelligence, but maybe they don't have this fancy computer with 4 GPUs that is 100,000 euros, in terms of cost, but this can help them. And we are looking even for working with tribal communities in Utah, for example. So that's an example of what we are doing. No? So you have the data sources at the left here, and we have the data acquisition. So we need to have, I'm referring to NER. I didn't explain that. NER is an initiative from the US government in which they realized with the COVID that they needed to have resources available, readily available for resolving these sort of important problems. And they did it in some way. So in 74 hours, I believe, they talked and they put together many supercomputers working together for resolving COVID issues. So now they found that for AI, they need to have a reserve of resources available. So this pilot has been selected as one of the resources that is going to be piloting this whole NER initiative. So the idea is that you have this data acquisition, and there are some NER data sources. Some are from scientific sources. Others are maybe from the US Patent Office, for example, like government data. But then you have this whole process of registration, indexing, discovery, and then you will need to define a workspace where you can do your work, then run some sort of analysis based on AI, machine learning, or whatever, and eventually have some sort of product that you will curate, and maybe you will share with others within your group if this is something private, or if this is something open with everyone, and you can again deposit back to the registry and repository, and then you can continue doing that. So if you continue with this, and many people from multiple domains can work in this platform, eventually you have a huge place where you can access to knowledge, to data, and to resources and infrastructure. So again, that's the infrastructure. I mean, that's something I've been working for a long time, but again, I believe that the actual scientific outcomes are the most important to me as well. And I'll give you just a couple of them. We have many here. No? This is the case of using real-time high-precision GPS data from Earthscope. And what we do is from the sensors, we are receiving a stream with 1,200 sensors giving like 1 hertz data from GPS stations. And we are able to, first of all, get this data, do some cleanup, some curation, and then we can do, first of all, an archival that can be used for doing offline processing, but also we can have a programming model that, based on the actual content of the data, if there is a pattern that is happening within this stream, you can trigger a workflow. So if you see that there is some shaking at some point, maybe you would like to run some sort of analytics in order to see if something is happening or not. No? Or maybe you have something programmed in order to do these studies when some conditions happen. And all of this is facilitated through this infrastructure. The same thing is the fire detection using the GO satellite data from, well, this is together with NOAA and NASA. And the idea was the same thing. They are like providing these satellite images in a certain interval, and then we were able to scrape this data to have the data stream, and then we were able to do an analysis of this data in real time. So having visualizations, having some sort of insights, and eventually you can have some sort of decision making. And I will stop talking about research infrastructures like traditional ones, because also, as you know, we have in an era where we have pervasive information and computation infrastructures. So the explosion of computation, communication, especially the networks, internet is around. We have a pervasive and ad hoc, anytime, anywhere, access to data. We have the cell phones with us, so we have always a computer within us. We have smartwatches. We have all type of things. And also, we are used to have on-demand access to resources like compute, to storage, and services. And this is something that you can see, obviously, in what we call the scientific digital continuum, which means is using any part of the spectrum, no? From running in a cloud or in a data center to running directly within the sensor. And here also you have a lot of expertise, no? In building even low-cost instrumentation with some sort of processing along the instrument. But if we are having this sort of instrumentation across specific locations of interest, the same thing can happen with people. People is also having access to the internet through their cell phones. They have presence, and that's key for citizen observatories. And now I'm doing some sort of a switch. So I'm coming from where I was coming to where I'm going now, and where I've been working for the last years together with Jaume and his team. And obviously, we need data from anywhere as possible. So you can have very expensive and good instrument deployed in a few locations, but we have people around the world in many, many locations. So in particular, we can complement the existing infrastructure that we have in place with this new approach in which people get involved, not only like regular people, we have people that they have interest in specific scientific domains. We have also schools that also they can leverage this effort for educating the new generations, and they would like to know more about it. But this is clearly covering gaps in terms of the spatial and temporal coverage. You can have like thousands of people like collecting data without having to pay tens of thousands of euros for buying this sort of high precision instrument. Even though maybe the quality is not as good as this instrument, you get a lot of data points. And also you can get the community to know about these problems. So if people know that there is an issue with maybe biodiversity loss, they can understand the issue and they can help us. If they also know that there are problems in our coast, they can also take action on that and behave in a different way. Hopefully, is part of the process. And of course, the people engagement. Here is not an instrument that you can just run. We have a community, and you need to make sure you are responsive, you are on top of the community, and you build a community that helps you to bring this sort of data that eventually is integrated within an infrastructure, again, a cyber infrastructure for observing some sort of data. No? So as I mentioned before, I have years of collaboration with the Dimos group here in the Institute. We also had some like shared publications with people that are here in the room today. And always the issue has been looking at sustainable development goals. So obviously biodiversity was one of the points, but now we are like opening this to environmental sciences and other issues. So my role in this case was assisting in the co-creation of the cyber infrastructure for Minca, which is the platform that probably all of you already know from Jaume, no? And it was actually developed within different projects. I'm highlighting Cost for Cloud, in which I was involved as an advisory board. And I like to also emphasize the fact that it's not just one single group doing the whole work. So because of these collaborations, we have been able to put together some sort of, let's call it technological hub within the area in Barcelona. And there are like a bunch of companies that they are working together with Envimos in this case to provide these sort of solutions and different capabilities that are needed. And that also opens the door for going beyond that and exploring other problems. For example, through this collaboration, we had the opportunity to work together also in the ANERIS project. It's a European Horizon Europe project. Here, the challenge is to basically like cover several gaps for marine sensing life technologies. And the most important concept is this idea of the operational marine biology, that maybe in physics is more well known, but in marine biology is not that usual to find. So here we have, from the acquisition of the data, validation, curation, and also the representation, the interpretation and dissemination. If you think about this pipeline, is similar to the ones that I showed you before, for NDP, for BDC. So there's a lot of common, and cyber infrastructure is not that different for citizen science issues or observatories compared to the cyber infrastructure for large facilities. So here you have some examples. So we're looking into the sensing technologies from like a small, very small, like biodiversity to big animals, and the products, they should be like across all of these areas, from genomics, participatory sciences, and also imaging and biooptics. And the idea is also enhancing existing networks with additional input points. And all of this project also has a lot of technologies. I'm just like putting here the whole list just to mention that in order to articulate all of these technologies, we need this sort of cyber infrastructure. We need some way to, and this is a diagram that we are kind of representing, the cyber infrastructure is package 5 in an area in which we are taking these technologies, we are helping on the processing layer and somehow articulating the workflow from the acquisition of that data until the product or whatever is it could be a map, it could be some sort of insights that is shared. Also, we have here the training and capacity building, but I just want to emphasize this aspect of cyber infrastructure. And also, cyber infrastructure allows you to do like other things. For example, in this case, integrating different technologies into specific data pipelines. This specific example is looking into identifying regions of interest and then having the identification using artificial intelligence. Or in artificial intelligence combined with actual citizens that can help, or experts on the matter, and then we can come up with this sort of hybrid intelligence. And for doing that, we are using in particular for the Minca platform what we call an API of APIs. So it's basically a way to, instead of having to put together some code specific for AI models, so we build an abstraction on top. So then we have a common API that you can ask for some sort of inference for a model, an AI model, and then you can select which one is the most effective, or you can select more than one, and you will get recommendations in terms of, okay, I believe this is the identification of the species with this level of confidence, and you can get maybe the output from 2 or 3 or 4 systems, and it's up to you to choose which one you believe, and if there is no consistency, you can also report back this inconsistency and help these models also to learn by training additionally. And also, in addition to ANERIS, I like to also highlight a little bit, this other project is called ECHO, it's another Horizon Europe project, but this one is also looking into engaging the citizens, but instead of looking at the ocean, here we are looking into the soil. So we are looking into the soil health, and we are trying to empower citizens to participate into this particular issue. You can also have a look, if you want, to the EcoSoil EU website. But just in short, our approach is also the same thing, cyber infrastructure. There is a need for a cyber infrastructure to consolidate these goals. And we, in particular, are working on something called EcoRepo, which is a repository for soil data, with the idea of having the cyber infrastructure, which is typically called the back end, so everything that happens under the scenes, and also, of course, some sort of user interface for people to access. And most importantly, this is done with interoperability and connection with existing databases and soil monitoring systems, like the European Union Soil Observatory system, and we are working on that. So that is somehow showing you that within citizen observatories, we can work in different domains. And this is pretty interesting because we work with projects in these specific issues. So we have ANERIS, we have ECHO, we have all these projects, but eventually they will finish, right? And then we have infrastructure observatories, which is a facility, something that has to stay. Obviously, the support from the funding agencies is important, or finding a model to sustain them. I have talked about OOI and others that they have like continuous funding for many years, but here these sort of developments of these observatories, these infrastructures, they take time, but they eventually can consolidate these issues. And here this is just a reference to the European strategy for Horizon Europe, based on the pillars. And you can see that maybe these projects that we have been talking about are within the clusters here, but they are highlighted research infrastructures as pillar 1, so excellent science is really vertebrating a lot of science and research. So this is kind of reinforcing the message that all of this cyber infrastructure work and research infrastructures are a must-do in order to do like excellent science. And also pointing out that just in my examples, and we could talk more about other initiatives that we are working on, we have already covered healthy oceans, seas, and coastal and inland waters in terms of mission areas for the Commission, but also soil health and food. So what we are seeing here is that we have an observatory, and we are using MINC in this particular case, to put together all of this, so we can give a solution to multiple domains and to cover multiple missions that are critical for the European Commission and for the Europeans in general, for the society. Okay. So basically, my message is that we have all of this, but in addition to all of this research, working on cyber infrastructure, I always like to work with the students. I mean, I've been teaching in 4 different universities for some time, and even I had the opportunity to work with a specific master thesis. You have here a couple of examples of master theses. I think all of them are from WOC, I believe, yes. And they are master theses related to citizen observatories. I also like to use, for example, when I was at OOI, using OOI data for working with the students and being somehow, proactive and trying to get them work with the streaming data. And we did a lot of exercises working also with high school students, and they were very talented, and they were able to catch up quickly with those things. So there is also this educational component that I personally like a lot, and I will continue doing over the years because I enjoy a lot, and also help us to identify new challenges and new solutions. And then I like to, after going through all of these examples, and I know that was maybe a little bit intense because there are many things that I would like to share, and I just took some highlights. But my takeaways, so after this whole discussion, is basically the first one is that cyber infrastructure is key. So we need cyber infrastructure no matter what. So you can think about research in cyber infrastructure too. So it's not just using the best practices and that's it. So I've been working also during my career in improving cyber infrastructure and building new models and new ways to build cyber infrastructure. For me, this is also a research. I know that in some cases, science and computer science is sometimes seen in a different way, but I still believe that also it's part of science. But at the same time, it enables any science that you can do at this point, and is helpful for different disciplines. I believe here in the institute, there could be different groups that could take advantage of this expertise and this sort of cyber infrastructure capabilities. And obviously, we are seeing a reshaping in the way that research is doing, especially with the AI and the use of data. Everything is changing. I was recently, for example, in Las Vegas in a conference, and they were talking about physics, so resolving physics problems with AI. So instead of resolving the equations themselves, they want to run a model that is going to run equations, but it was easier to train a model and just run machine learning or some sort of artificial intelligence than running the typical equations solving. So it's curious, but things are changing a lot, and people are seeing a lot the use of AI as a facilitator, as an enabler, or an accelerator also for science. And of course, participatory sciences, citizen science, has a crucial role in interdisciplinary, multidimensional research. This is clear, and it's complementing, it's not replacing the existing infrastructures, large facilities, sensors. All of this has to remain, obviously, but this is complementary, and the combination of both, if we can do it properly, I think it has a lot of potential for basically resolving important problems. And also the last one is that I really believe that citizen observatories, they have to be seen as research infrastructures, because they are not just a platform for letting people upload pictures with the cell phone. There are a lot of things happening underneath, and we have the opportunity to go much beyond that. So with this, as a next step, I'll be happy to respond any questions now, or even if you want to follow up offline, but I'd like to thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you, Ivan. I think many topics has been addressed. Just let me start with one question that, particularly this holidays I was thinking on. You mentioned that part of the cyber infrastructure depends on high-speed networks. My concern is about that. My feeling is that part of these high-speed networks are controlled by private companies more and more. Up to which point this could shape in the future the science that those type, for example, the case of social sciences related, to Twitter. It has changed completely after, Twitter was, bought by a particular company. What do you think about that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think that's a very important issue. I like to also maybe complement, if you don't mind, the question, not only with networking, also with even the actual infrastructure itself. So we are buying processors from United States. They are built in the United States, or they are designed in the United States. Sometimes they are maybe produced in the United States, but sometimes they are produced in China or in Taiwan. And then you don't know what's happening with these microprocessors when they are coming to you. So clearly Europe, and in case of the microprocessors, there is the CHIPS Act that Europe has put together, because they want to, basically, now they see that the need for having the European sovereignty for, in this case, processors. The same thing applies to networks. So we cannot be in the hands of, basically, in this case, you're having some examples of companies based in the US, and we don't have any control on them. So it could happen that tomorrow there is another Elon Musk or maybe, I don't know, Trump, the new president of the US, maybe is going to decide that NVIDIA cannot sell accelerators to Europe anymore. So what do we do with AI if we are using all NVIDIA accelerators because it's the state of the art? So we need to clearly build European solutions, and I think having interconnection between different networks makes sense. It's something that needs to happen in order to establish global collaborations, but I think we need to start making more progress into having a more European-centric approach to these things, including communications, but also technology, and in general, all of these different elements that are the foundation for the citizen observatories.
Okay, thank you. Any question?
Hello, Ivan. And thank you, first of all, and congratulations for your project. My question is actually about all the energy that all these servers, all this data storage at some cloud somewhere at the end, the energy that is taking, because as far as I'm concerned, the AI, for its especially, now is actually an issue, because in terms of pollution, no? Because all these data, all these AI tools requires a lot of energy. So my question is there actually some control, or is there someone in your team that is actually checking out in terms of pollution, or like no, if this is, because yeah, it's an amazing tool, of course, and actually the purpose of the tool is brilliant, is green, but yeah, at the same time, if it's actually like contributing on the climate change, I don't know. Thank you.
Thanks so much for the question. Actually, I mean, I was highlighting some details. I mean, this is 20 years of work in different projects, but I haven't mentioned, I also spent almost 7 or 8 years working in energy efficiency and looking at these issues at different levels. And you're completely right. So the explosion of AI is requiring a lot of energy for data centers and even hyperscalers. They are constructing them close to like the energy sources. I was tempted to say nuclear plants because it is the case in some cases, not that they put it close because they want to avoid the transmission of energy because there are some losses. But even the current estimations is that AI is consuming more than some countries in terms of energy and also in terms of polluting. So I agree with you, it's a problem. It's something that has to be addressed. We need to address this from different perspectives, I believe. On the one hand, we need also people to be aware of that. Because many people, they don't know when they are going to their cell phone and they're checking Gmail or whatever they're checking, it has a cost. I mean, and you think it's free. I have my free account. No? It's not free. I mean, there is some footprint, some CO footprint that you need to account for it. So there are many initiatives. Some people are looking into optimizing them. That's obviously the low-hanging fruit. So how do you optimize using maybe sources that are clean for not only powering the systems, because powering is part of the cost, but 40% of the cost is the cooling itself. So sometimes they put the data centers in regions where the weather is cold, so they open literally the doors and they have free cooling, no, for reducing the cost and the footprint, no, to the environment. So that's obviously the low-hanging fruit, doing that. And then I think, and there are some initiatives on having more awareness to people. So when you are basically doing this ChatGPT request, whatever, no, you get some sort of credit, no, for energy, or in this case for potential pollution that is being done. There is also other things we can do to help, no, improving this, which is obviously using renewable sources, and that involves in this case legislation. I mean, it's just a question of politics. The only thing is that, I mean, we have data centers and hyperscalers everywhere in the world, but the legislations are different depending on the country, and obviously maybe you can regulate more in one place than another, no, and make sure that you are going to neutral if possible. But I think this is a non-stop issue, so it's going to be difficult to stop it because society is seeing the benefits on that, and it's applied to robotics, to things that soon is going to be in our houses and is going to be helping our people like more directly. So I think it's a challenge, and I think the first thing is awareness from the people that this is a problem, is a challenge, so they are responsible on the way they use technology. And then trying to find like better ways to use renewables, other sources that are clean for like powering these systems. I'm not entering into also the waste for the processors, because there is also the problem of the like the pollution of the waste of these computers when they are obsolete. What happens with them? No, recycling is not trivial for this sort of infrastructure, but it's something that probably we need to keep like pushing in that direction.
If not, I just would like to add.
Nice talk. A lot of information, a lot of data, and a lot of things that blow your mind. And I'm always puzzled by this type of presentations that are built on data collection. All sorts of data collection. I'm amazed by the numbers you provide, by all the data that is around us and that is being collected. But then I think that there is a big gap in between the data itself and the potential use of that data. So scientists are driven by the need of discovering new things. And when you set up an observatory and you have been observing the same for many, 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 many years, scientists get bored about that data set that it's not telling you anything. And sometimes the data is so difficult to process that if you don't provide the product to a user, then the data itself, it's just storing hard drives in a computing center. So I would like to know your opinion, because I'm an observationalist by training, so and I like to observe the ocean, but changing the different observational methods depending on the scientific question that I have in my mind. So, and I don't know if this data this huge amount of data is going to be useful for scientific advance at some point, because you will need to keep going at sea with vessels or with all sorts of new devices, and then you're building and building and building. So I have the experience with Ocean Networks Canada. They start with a few nodes and few instruments, and they are adding more instruments and adding more instruments because one scientist wants to observe that. But if the location that it's fixed, so you cannot be taking your instruments and moving another location, but you have a communication cable and a fiber optic cable. So that point remains just a data collector point with no interest for anybody. So I would like to know your opinion on this, because this puzzles me a lot. And I've been involved in Ocean Networks Canada for many years, and still finding a gem of a nice data set among all the data that is archived daily, it's really hard. So I don't know. I don't know if you picture my it's a question. It's not the question. It's just a thought that comes to my mind every time that I see this type of. That I'm convinced that it's useful, but I don't know if at what's that.
Actually, I mean, thank you for this observation. I think is a very legit question, because it is an issue. I mean, I was talking about infrastructure, about all of these like numbers and a lot of data and so on. But for me, I was trying also to make the point that the data itself, at least for me, is not important. So the data is the medium, is what you have as a raw material, no, to start constructing something which is the inside. So what you need to understand is some sort of phenomena or something that you can obtain together maybe with traditional methods that I don't think they need to disappear. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, also friends from Ocean Networks Canada, no? I mean, I also had the opportunity to interact with them also for a long time. And also they were facing their issues. No? I mean, you can see that they are having also deploying instruments for specific reasons, but then they see a lot of vessels going around and they are messing up the whole objective for that. Probably in the long-term future, I could even think on things that maybe now are science fiction, no? Like maybe magnetic resonance, like 30 years ago was science fiction, and now is being used every day, you know, in hospitals. And maybe we will be in a situation in which we have really autonomous system that can go and do a lot of work for us without having to, physically go. But for now, I think these techniques that are becoming available to us, for example, this idea of prefetching or even the recommender systems, sometimes you are trying to resolve a problem, you have to address the issue of going to a data set and maybe a repository, and it's still tedious. I mean, there is the whole first principles to facilitate that, so you can do maybe a semantic query, no? But still, no, semantic query, depending, your domain is like, okay, I mean, I need to learn all of this for just, I want to get my data, that's it. No? So probably if we, and something that I've been working personally is, for example, trying to use LLMs, like ChatGPT, you know, some sort of natural language processing system that you can make questions in natural language, and then there is the whole processing on this like sea of data that Right now, the approach that is being taken is let's just structure everything properly. Let's follow the right approaches and the right scheme and the right, like ontologies or whatever, no? And you will be able to run those things. I can see in the future, and not very far in the future, that all of this can a little bit disappear. So you might be having, I don't want to call it like low quality, but a quick answer. So maybe you will get, like in ChatGPT, you get answers that are not correct because they are looking into some data that is in in the internet or in different data sources. But at least you get some initial, direction, no? And from that direction, you can go farther. So as we are advancing into these methods, my hope is that we can, on the one hand, use traditional methods. Then we can use these new methods based on data. And as we are seeing in the convergence between, success, no, what you are doing now with both methods, probably there will be a point in which new methods and maybe methods that we don't even know now are going to surpass, no, the possibilities with more traditional methods. That's something that has to be, seen. I think we are not there yet. We are in the process. We are in the middle of a big transition in terms of observing, could be the ocean or any other potential environment. But I think that we need to keep pushing into leveraging all of these investments that they are done in many cases for industry. So if there is a lot of money for something that industry is pushing, let's take it for science. That's always my approach. Let's not try to reinvent the wheel if somebody else is putting the money, because not always we get the right money for science, but if somebody is investing into techniques that can be leveraged to do science, let's focus on using these techniques and this knowledge into science. So I don't know the next large language model, how good it's going to be. They are promising the world now with it, but I don't think it can do science, an LLM for sure. No? But maybe it can be a facilitator for doing part of the work. So with these tools, if we can help researchers to identify directions, maybe you can be more productive. It's, for example, the case of, there is also a study that was done in the US as well, in which they saw that many faculty, they spend, I think, like 40% of their time doing non-science work. So going and going to the computer to do whatever data curation and all of these mundane issues that you don't have to do. You want to focus on science, not in cleaning data or doing something like that. So I think that in my opinion, at least, the future is to simplify these tasks that are mundane so you can focus better on science. And once you have the tools, you will need to maybe change a little bit your mind and start using the right tools to get to the right point. And the new generations probably are going to be much better than the older ones doing that, because they have been born within these technologies. And I'm hoping this is reflected soon in the outcomes.
You hear me?
Yes.
Let me pick your brain about correlation and just going from the ocean to the universe. So arguably the biggest data monster, it's VLBI, very long baseline interferometry, which is equivalent, and you had a couple of images actually from the EHT, Event Horizon Telescope, and that's the image of a black hole. You have M87 and you have Sagittarius A. Correlation, you also had UNAVCO, EarthScope, IRIS, the high rate GPS 1 Hertz network that you show in there. It's actually, the receiver does a correlation, is the incoming signal and the signal that is generated internally. They correlate it together and they tell you, a delay, and they tell you X, Y, Z where you are, and what kind of waveforms and vibrations, and therefore into seismology. The EHT generates about a petabyte, a few petabytes per day, when there is a 24-hour session, and there's once per year. Those petabytes from each one of the 10 participating station radio telescopes, they have to be correlated 2 by 2. And that's done, software correlator, it's a standard Fourier transform, and then a product to be able to synthesize a big bandwidth from which you then invert and you make the image that you show there.
Right.
What's your thinking, or what's the thinking of your community about the big bottleneck in that whole entire process? But it also applies to LIGO, gravitational detection of the gravitational waves. It applies to any big infrastructure, any big observatory that wants to pull a signal out of the noise by cross-correlating. What are the alternatives? And I tell you that in the case of the cross-correlation of the HT, just for 24 hours worth of data, you spend 1 full year cross-correlating those petabytes into gigabytes, that then you generate an image, a Fourier transform, then it's a few megabytes, and then the JPEG that you have there, it's a few kilobytes. So you go from petabytes to kilobytes. The bottleneck is the cross-correlation. Is there anything in your brain, I guess, but the brain of the cyber people, about what are the alternatives? How can the cross-correlation be done in a way that it's way more efficient, less time-consuming than what is done nowadays?
Thanks for the question. It's a very interesting question, and I'm aware about this problem. Actually, in this particular case, I'm aware also the fact that the selected locations, because sometimes you have to establish the locations where they are most effective. Maybe they are not the most effective locations for networking, for example. So, in this particular case, I'm aware that there is this huge amounts of data. They are having problems to handle even the immediate processing of that data. So, just having enough infrastructure to retrieve the data is already a challenge itself. There are solutions, I know, that is working and it's something that can be done. But now the question is, once you have all of these amounts of data, how can you speed up this? You could say, okay, let's build maybe a huge supercomputer that you can do that, but you need to transfer the data, which is a problem itself as well. There are some approaches to that. So some people are thinking that they can do better methods, numerical methods to improve this, and of course that's something that is legit. You can keep trying to improve that, but the potential improvement is just a little delta. It's not orders of magnitude. There is hopes that for, depending what problems, new technologies can maybe make a difference. So I don't want to say that for this particular problem, quantum computing is the right one, but I know that technology is being getting into the limits of the physical limits. Even like the microprocessors are getting into the limits based on Moore's law, and we will need to look into new materials, even for building processors. So for these particular issues that are going to happen more and more, over time, are going to happen more frequently, I can expect that there is a natural evolution on basically the foundational components that can facilitate that, together with better methods. So in the short term, I don't have an answer, because otherwise I would be probably resolving the issues they are having now, and I know they are severe and they are complex. But from a point of view, I believe that we need to continue. I remember this problem, grid computing in early 2000s, it was a big deal because of the LHC instruments. They knew that they were going to produce a lot of data. They knew that a single location was not enough for even storing the data that was going to be produced. So they started building this sort of network of systems or network of facilities to store data. And then everything evolved, and the cloud was evolved based on virtualization and so on. So I'm hoping that the same cyber infrastructure can find the right processes for getting there. So the problems in terms of communication, in order to get to the right place on time to start doing the computation, and also doing what you said, the cross correlation about these measurements, is something that hopefully, if you want to improve by orders of magnitude, we will need to see significant changes in technology. Without that, I don't see a clear answer to this problem, which is a hard problem.
Yeah, sorry, I'm more interested in the computing than in the data transfer. So exactly. One of those telescopes that you mentioned, it's in the South Pole, actually. Yeah. So there are terabytes of data that need to come out of there. It takes months to come out of there because they ship it. NSF is deploying a fiber now through McMurdo to be able to bring that data back. So assuming that all the data is in a data center, the question that I'm most interested in is how can correlation, which is, a foundation of everything that we do in science, how can a correlation be made more efficient? If it can, is there anything in the AI world that would improve the comparison, the correlating data streams from two different places to get the signal out of the noise? I'm interested in the computing itself. Assuming that all the data is in place. One of the ways to get the data out of the South Pole is using a laser communication, a laser comm. You get 100 gigabits per second, time long enough, you do it faster than doing it by shipping modules. But let's assume that we have everything in a computer. That's what I'm most interested in. That'll be sort of like a revolution in terms of definitely astronomy, definitely, LIGO, EHT, many projects. You mentioned some of them in the earth sciences as well.
Yeah, I mean, colleagues from Johns Hopkins, for instance, they are looking into this problem using AI for resolving these sort of problems. So I like to say that, because I don't want to be like super optimistic, to be honest. I mean, they have promising results in terms of using AI. The only question is that the current AI kind of processes or the AI models that they are built, they require a lot of, in many cases, trained data, and this training of the data, in depending what scenarios, is not obvious. So the one you are describing is actually probably not the most appropriate one. So I know that they are trying to resolve problems that for now they were basically done by like equations in physics, for example, and using AI for those. But those cases, they require, I know that, for example, people from ANSYS, from the simulation that they use for vehicles and so on, they use that, and they have been training models for 7 years to come up with something. So creating a model for one experiment like this might be possible. So using the state-of-the-art or the next generation of AI could be potentially a little improvement, but I don't see it as a game changer. So I don't think these current methods for AI is going to make a completely change in the way that the compute is done. It's going to still require a huge infrastructure, a lot of resources, and it will require also some time. There are many hopes into quantum, but at the same time, the other day, even the CEO of NVIDIA was saying that he doesn't see quantum to be a reality in less than 30 years. And then there were some people from companies doing quantum that they said it is completely false, that they are expecting to have real quantum computing systems operational within much less time frame. So this is probably a disruption that could help on that. There is also a lot of work in other areas like silicon photonics that can potentially improve also the way that the computation is done. But as today, I think I don't see like a clear change that I could work today to resolve this problem more than following with the current kind of natural evolution of AI to help on that. That's pretty much what I can say. Sorry, I don't have any more precise response to that. It's a hard one.
Maybe last short question? No? Well, just a comment. You mentioned this idea of citizen science as infrastructure. For the first time, because we started putting this on the table in the 7th framework program, at that time they look at us, the commission, woof, you are running too fast. Yeah. But now there was a call on concepts, conceptual new research infrastructure, and they accept us, the citizens observatories, as one of the first. Oh. So we hope we will move on this line.
Great. This is very good news. I mean, I'm hoping that can be moved forward. Thank you all.